Welcome to the podcast. It's the best podcast in the world. This is going to end up on the show. I know it, motherfucker.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome in and welcome back to episode 126 of Epitome of Stupidity, your favorite fucking metal show. We're back from a spring break with Indelible by the almighty fucking Pelican. And if you've heard this show before a couple times, maybe you know how much I love these guys. The crowd cheers wildly behind me at the idea of them being on this show finally. Indelible is one of the lead singles off of Pelican's new album titled Flickering Resonance. And good God, not only is it awesome, but the whole album is an absolute lesson, not just in instrumental awesomeness, but music in general. But as usual, more on all that here shortly. If you're new here, welcome in. I'm Clint. I'll be your host, and I think you're going to like it. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me, wherever it is that you're hearing this from, please and thank you. I'm going to talk for about 3-ish minutes, and then we'll get on to another instance of one of the best music-related conversations you're going to hear. If you're not new here, you already know all this, but I'd still like to say welcome back, and I heart you. Mead Read at EOS, we're happy to not only provide you with the previously mentioned music conversations, but also with a discount for the best damn mead out there. And they've got the awards to prove it. Just go to brimminghornmeadery.com, pick out some of their tastiness, and then at checkout, use code EPITOMEAD, that's EPITOMEAD, and wham bam, not only do you have some tasty mead getting shipped right to your damn door, but you've got a 10% discount. Exclamation point. Okay, into the home stretch of me saying thanks before I'm joined by Trevor of Pelican. Again, as I've mentioned before, if you've heard the show before, you know how much I love my instrumental stuff and Pelican in fucking general. At this point, they've been around for well over 20 years. They've been a forerunner in the post-metal instrumental awesomeness category for the majority of that time as well. They've released a handful of both albums, EPs, and all the other stuff over the years, but their most recent full length came way back in 2019 when it came out. That is Nighttime Stories. Well, that was my favorite album of 2019. They are back in 2025 with Flickering Resonance, the previously mentioned. And you know what? I'm going to skip to the end here. It's going to be... it's solid contention for my fucking favorite album of the year this year. Returning for this album is the old guitar player Laurent Schroeder-Lebec. I'm probably not saying that right, but whatever. This is his first time back with the band since 2012, I believe, and the album immediately presents itself as perfectly fucking Pelican. Almost immediately, within seconds of the damn album, you know that A, this is fucking Pelican, and B, that you are going to be paying attention to it for the whole damn thing because it's going to be fucking great. That's enough for me, right? Let's talk to Trevor of the band Chicago Phone Sounds. Go. Cell phone. And he answered. On the line with me today is Trevor of fucking Pelican. Trevor, how the hell are you tonight?
I'm doing okay. Thank you for having me.
I am fucking glad to. Where are you calling from?
I am speaking to you from my bunker underneath my house in Chicago, Illinois.
The bunker in Chicago.
Yeah.
So Pelican nowadays is yourself on guitar, the brothers Brian and Larry on bass and drums respectively, and the return of Laurent on guitar as well.
Right.
As long as I've got all my stuff here straight, Brian, Larry, and you have been together for almost 25 years, and Laurent was there for a large chunk of it as well before stepping away for a while. What's one thing that over the years you guys still disagree on, or one thing that you guys vehemently disagreed on but have now come to agree on?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, like, we have wildly divergent music tastes. So one anecdote that I guess comes up on a sort of regular basis because it was particularly funny is, Laurent, he came of age as a French expat, raised like all over. His dad kind of moved around a lot as an international business person, but like a bulk of his teenage years was spent in Korea, where he kind of discovered punk through tape trading. Anyways, he's got a very interesting come up, but what it didn't involve was growing up in America listening to classic rock radio. So, like, when he moved here, that was shit that he didn't know anything about. So he approached it with this wide-eyed novelty appreciation that often culminated in really funny ways. So there was one time that we were at practice and he was discussing REO Speedwagon, and Larry viciously responded, "Are you serious? You like REO Speedwagon?" And Laurent said, "No, no, no, you don't understand. Just the first 11 albums." And I will say that is one matter that probably only Laurent agrees on, is the first 11 REO records.
That's fucking hilarious. So, mentioning some of the changes there in the timeline for the band, can you give us a brief Cliff Notes history of the band from inception till Flickering Resonance?
All right. So, in the mid-late 90s, Laurent, Larry, and I started a grindcore band called Tusk. We did a number of albums and a bunch of regional touring, and mostly playing DIY and punk spaces in the Chicagoland area. Laurent was the bass player in Tusk, but he is a good guitarist by nature, as he is in Pelican. And I think at some point he started getting frustrated with just playing bass and wanted to be playing guitar in a project. And he and Larry wrote a couple tunes that didn't really fit in the Tusk mold. I think he was trying to figure out some way to fit guitar into what we were doing. And we ended up just saying, "Hey, why don't we just turn this into a side band?" And we started doing Pelican as sort of like a side project to Tusk. We would practice at the Herweg's parents' house in Des Plaines, Illinois. And we would literally do Tusk for 2 hours, take a half-hour break, and then do Pelican for 2 hours. And that was our Saturday pretty much for years. Because Laurent had switched to guitar for Pelican, we got Larry's brother, Brian, who was one bedroom away, to join up on bass. Things sort of took a natural course where that band just had a much more natural momentum than Tusk did, I guess because it's less antagonistic than grindcore. And the lack of screaming vocals made it easier for people to get on board with. So we started attracting people that were not just in the hardcore community, but people all over the music community in Chicago found something to appreciate about it. We ended up linking up with Hydra Head Records, who reissued our demo and then did our first 3 albums. We ended up switching to Southern Lord for our 4th album, What We All Come to Need, in 2009. And then somewhere in the course of the touring, which we became a full-time touring band in 2005, and that carried it until 2010 when we all started getting burned out. Laurent's burnout was to such an extent that he decided he needed a break from the band so that he could start a family and kind of like clear his head of all the band stuff. The other 3 of us continued on. We wrote 2 records, Forever Becoming in 2013, which on that album we were joined by Dallas Thomas, who joined sort of like right before the recording process. And then we wrote another record with him, Nighttime Stories, that came out in 2019. So this is a very long Cliff Notes version, but it's 25 years to cover. In early 2020, Brian and Larry started writing tunes again for what would be our 7th album. But then the strangest thing happened. There was a global pandemic, and we had to put the band on hold. Pelican is a band that does most of our writing in a room together. A lot of it takes place at like sound checks and like getting ready for shows and stuff like that. So when we weren't able to rehearse, we kind of had to put the brakes on writing. It coincided with the label that put out our first 3 albums, Hydra Head, folded and returned all the band's masters to the bands to do what they wanted to with them. We ended up licensing our Hydra Head albums to a Chicago label called Thrill Jockey, and we subsequently spent the next 2 years putting together deluxe reissues of those albums, which meant combing over the archives, remastering audio. The album The Fire in Our Throats Will Beckon the Thaw, we did like a full remix from the original master tapes. done without Dallas. It was done with the original lineup of the band. We were in constant communication about these reissues. And at the end of 2021, Dallas announced that he didn't really want to continue doing the band with us anymore. And at that point, we had a number of shows that we had been postponing year after year during the pandemic. And they had been moved to 2022. And we were like, well, what should we do? But because we had been talking and working with Laurent on these reissues, we were like, hey, why don't we just ask Laurent if he wants to play some shows with us, and we can do them as sort of like a commemoration of the reissues. Those shows happened in the summer of 2022. They went really great. We were then asked to do a pair of covers for this Chicago archival label called Numero Group. So we did a cover of Karate and a cover of Unwound. And getting in the studio together with the original lineup just stirred up some creative juices. And we should rejoin with Laurent permanently and write an album. And then we wrote the record that just came out last week.
And we'll pick it up from there. Last week, Flickering Resonance came out. How do you feel about it? How's reception been so far? You may think it went long. I think those were great cliff notes, by the way.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we're very, very stoked on the album. I think like the process of reuniting with this lineup kind of is just a shot in the arm. It reignited all of these old feelings that maybe we hadn't been accessing for a long time. I think like especially in the first Trump administration years, we were kind of in a period of, I don't know, we were dealing with a lot of personal losses. We had friends were passing away, family members were passing away. We were kind of in this state of like political grief, and we were dwelling in a space of darkness for a long time. And reuniting with Laurent and just rediscovering the joy of that era, but without the pressures of sort of approaching it as a professional enterprise. And it was just purely motivated for the joy of creating music. It was just like, I don't know, it was a euphoric feeling creating these songs. And I think that comes across in the material that we wrote. It's just like a very euphoric record, which maybe isn't suited to the apocalyptic times that we live in. But I feel like I appreciate that these songs, and one of the things that we have heard a few times is that it sort of grants a reprieve from some of the grief that people are feeling over this era. I think that's useful.
Yeah, no, anything helps, right? The album is so wonderfully 100% fucking Pelican, and it's completely clear seconds into it. Nighttime Stories wasn't like some massive deviation or anything, but like I said, seconds into Flickering Resonance, I actually looked at my speakers and smiled. I knew I was in for a real good fucking hour or whatever it is. Was there thought put into making sure that feeling was there when you guys were doing this, or was it some form of natural? Again, with Laurent's return, did that play a hand in it?
We don't ever chase a particular vibe or feeling when we're writing. We're just sort of like following our intuition. And I think the intuition in this case was that we were in a celebratory mood, just coming back together again. I remember early in the process, staying with my friend Justin Foley in New York, and I was kind of describing the music to him, and he said, that sounds like the opposite of Nighttime Stories. Are you worried about like the fact that this is going to feel like an about heel, or like it's going to throw your fans off or anything like that? And I was like, not really, because like I think like whatever we do sounds like Pelican one way or the other, and like I think there's a valid space for all of those different moods. So I don't know. I don't remember what the question was, but I feel like
either way, my follow-up, and I'm reading this verbatim. For me, Nighttime Stories wasn't just my favorite album of 2019, but it was my favorite thing to listen to while I was pissed off for a long time. Flickering Resonance definitely has a different emotional feel to it. For me, I like just in case you asked me about it and I went blank state, I actually put in parentheses the way it comes across for me, and the hopeful thing's reflected for me. I've got like a hopeful melancholy out of it.
Yeah.
What's the emotional state that you get out of it?
I think just that. I actually, it's funny that you said that, because I was just driving my 12-year-old to tutoring before this, and I just listened to Apple Music radio or whatever in the car. Like I just let it do the steering, and it went from like Red House Painters to Just Bill to Midwife, and I just said like, I don't know. It seems like Apple Music is in a melancholy mood, and my boy didn't know what melancholy meant. I explained it to him, but that's the vibe of the era, right? It's like just this sort of like forlorn quality to everything, but I'm happy to tap into something that's a little bit more wistful. And that's kind of like what the thinking was behind a song title like Pining Forever, because when you're pining for something, you're wishing for it. But it's usually you're pining for something that's escaped you, but the concept of ever is something that's ahead of you. So it's sort of like caught in this liminal state between like nostalgia, but also wishing for things that are down the line, and like this permanent state of euphoria that's just sort of outside of reach. So that's a meandering answer, but that's sort of like how I feel is meandering.
With the very natural feel and evolution of a lot of these Pelican songs, I like to think that you guys get in the room or the sound check thing that you were mentioning just a minute ago, and these songs just kind of fall out. What is the writing process actually like, and how has it evolved? The writing and recording process, how has it evolved for you guys over the years?
Nighttime Stories was largely written in the room together, either in groups of 3 or all 4 of us, where like usually like an idea would come from jamming at soundcheck or something like that, and then Dallas would remember it and make a recording of it or something like that, and then he would bring it up at a later date and be like, remember this thing, let's work on this, and then like kind of jam on it until it turned into something that resembled a song. Flickering Resonance is really different in that most of the songs started from riffs or clusters of riffs. The vast majority came from Laurent or Brian, and then the 3 of us, the Chicago contingent, Laurent, Brian, and myself, have been meeting every week, and we will take that conglomeration of riffs and then start shaping it into a song. I think a lot of them, it's usually pretty close to a song, and then I've been sort of taking on more of an editor arranger role. So I'll be like, Laurent will present a series of riffs, and I'll be like, okay, well, this like make this go to that, we have to do this, and then like introduce a melody line or something like that like helps connect the tissue. So it's been fun. It's been really collaborative. And I think one of the differences that we've noticed, or especially Laurent noticed, because he wasn't around for 10 years to watch how our communication evolved in the writing process, is that we've gotten a lot of divorcing ourselves from ego. I think in the old days, like you'd write something, and if the other people didn't like it, you'd be like, well, you got to deal with that because I like. And there's while it was democratic in the sense that everybody got their shit in the jar, it wasn't democratic in terms of like everybody would feel good about every part at the end of the day. Whereas now it's like if somebody's like, I'm not vibing on that, that's the end of the story. It hits the cutting room floor. I think we're all trying to serve the song and what the song is trying to do.
And I think that clearly comes through and works fucking exquisitely. You mentioned something there in the build up about Laurent pushing something to this, or a melody line needs to be put here. I don't want to ask largely generic, hey, you're in an instrumental band questions, but guess what I'm going to fucking do? So without that, what is the fuck? I can't even think of a way to genericify it. I didn't put this on here because I didn't want to do this, and now I'm lost at it. What is the process? How do you decide this has gone on long enough that we need some form of a breakdown in lieu of sing along fucking chorus, or whatever way I can say this so that I can stop saying things and you get an idea of what I'm trying to say?
I think all of us are restless. It all boils back down to intuition. Like there's no like we're not following like a chart where there's not like rules that we set up or anything like that. I think all of us are restless. So it's like, we write riffs that are sort of longer than your average, like, 4 beats, and then you turn it around. So they're usually like progressions more than riffs, right? So it'll be like a 16 beat thing with like variations. And then when we repeat, we usually don't repeat exactly what happened before. There's usually something that's different because we just like, to our ears, like we can't stand to just hear it happen the same way over and over again. But in every variation that you introduce, it introduces another possibility for where the song can go. And I think that's just like, I don't know, that's just I don't know. It's just our process. And I realize I've caught myself doing it from listening to these interviews, that I set things up like I'm going to be listing things off as a list, and I always say A, and then I never hit a B. So I know I just did that. I'm totally aware of it now. I'm trying to fix this. Next time, I'm gonna get it. I'm not gonna do.
I'm glad you fucking noticed because I didn't. What role?
Somebody else is noticing it. I know somebody else. It has to be noticing it, and I apologize. I certainly do.
We're gonna find a B in here some fucking. What role and how much experimentation
that did this, right?
Do what now?
So we're all looking for the person that did this.
We're all in this together.
Yeah.
What role and how much experimentation is there with tone when you guys are writing and recording?
I think we're all sort of on our own tone journeys. And where we fine tune it is in the studio. Like, I think all of us have a different thing that we're going for. I think Laurent is really chasing a clarity thing. Brian is really searching for a specific kind of growl, and I'm really hooked on like a thick mid-range thing. And in the studio, we try to find a way to dial all of those things where they cover the most spectrum possible. I wouldn't say that we're all sitting there like fucking with each other's knobs or anything like that. It's more like we all have a very distinct individual thing that we're after. And they happen to complement each other, but there is a little bit of like fine tuning once we're in the studio for sure.
A little bit push pull, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Brian's tone is something that makes me fucking happy in ways that I don't have words for. It is so good. Were I to chase a tone, I might try to chase his, but as of yet, I'm not that stupid. Are there any specific pedals or gear that are essential to the Pelican sound?
I'm sure each of us would give you a different answer, and I regrettably am not super studied on the other's pedals. I would say that for me, I'm really into using a volume pedal for dynamics. I have a Dunlop volume pedal that I'm very keen on. I'm currently using the Earthquaker Palisades Overdrive for my gain. I find the Strymon Big Sky to be essential for my reverb sculpting. And I use a couple different delays. I really like the Earthquaker Afterneath. Or no, I'm sorry, Avalanche Run. The Afterneath is a reverb pedal that I've had mixed results with. I know Laurent really likes it. He has a few Earthquakers as well. I'm not going to try and remember all of them.
How about the album art? I love the album art, and I think it conveys some of the feelings that we've already talked about in that like special way that an album art can just relate with fucking music. Where did that come from?
That's Christian Dean. We linked with him for an EP that we did last year. That was the first two of the batch of songs that we wrote for this album, Adrift and Tending the Embers. And a friend of Laurent's had suggested his Instagram account as just sort of like an art account to follow. and he just shared it with the rest of us, and we were all enamored with it right away. Landscapes have always been a big part of our artwork since the beginning, and his work just presented a new like sort of a different spin on the same thing that seems like aligned with our established aesthetic. He lives in Utah, Provo, Utah, and he goes on hikes around the mountains and takes photographs of them and does intricate pen recreations of the landscapes that he photographs. So we commissioned art from him for the Adrift Tending the Embers EP. We loved it. And we all agreed that like we wanted that thread of continuity to carry over to this album, but that we needed it to be more colorful than the last album. So Laurent had seen a photograph of his of the Aurora Borealis that he had taken, and we asked him if he could do something not dissimilar from the Adrift EP, but that would incorporate sort of like a color scheme that evoked that same color wash of the Aurora Borealis. There was also a theme throughout the record of flame and flame meditation, where you focus on the flickering of a flame and try to block out other sensory input. So he incorporated those images into the artwork as well. And like you said, it just complements the music so perfectly. We could not be happier with how it turned out.
Yeah, it is fucking wonderful. The contrast of the colors and all that, it works so well. You mentioned there the theme and the flickering and all that stuff. The next thing I've got here is I assume that the title Flickering Resonance is a combination of specific resonance and flickering stillness. If I'm right about that, how did that come about? As long as, again, a big generic, how do you come up with the names of songs without lyrics?
Yeah, I think for all of our albums, what we usually do is write most of the songs before we start trying to figure out the themes that link them together. In terms of this record, I think the two song titles from this era that encapsulate what we're after or what we're thinking about or what we're evoking through our songs is Tending the Embers from the EP from last year, which is about recognizing the fragility of this creative partnership, the temporal quality that we have for our creativity, that there's an impermanence to everything, right? And that you are only going to be able to bask in the warmth of that creative energy if you are a steward to it and you are taking care of it and making sure that the things that it needs are there for it. So there was that theme of like, tending to the fire, tending to the garden, making sure that everything is where it needs to be. And then the other song title that really evokes it is Specific Resonance, which is that we realized that when this particular group of individuals is together creating, we're tapping into a resonance that extends beyond what we are individually capable of, right? So the idea of flickering resonance kind of takes the idea of that resonance, our creative resonance as a four-piece, and introduces the concept of a wavering flame or something that that evokes the sense of that temporal quality, that it is something that we recognize its impermanence and that we need to be stewards to it.
That's a lot smarter than anything I would have thought or came up with there. What's your favorite song on the album?
I apologize for bringing the hoity-toity shit to epitome of stupidity, but I gotta be me.
If somebody had to do it, it might as well be you. What's your favorite song on the album?
Oh, I don't know about favorites. I'll tell you well, there's two songs that I'll talk about. I think Specific Resonance was really special because that's the first song that we wrote in this iteration of the band, that we had just done those numero covers and we had agreed that we would write a record. Brian and I had a lot of reticence about it because we hadn't written in so many years. the writing for Nighttime Stories had been so slow and arduous. We were very cautious about approaching writing again. And we got in the room, and I knew that Laurent had ideas that he wanted to present and work on. But we were just sort of like setting up and getting tones, dialing in our pedals, and like just kind of fucking around to warm up. And I believe it was I started playing one of the parts that ended up in the middle section of that song. And I was just sort of like playing it, and then Brian jumped in, and then we just started jamming, and it just kept going on. And I grabbed my phone and just started recording. And almost the entire middle act of the song just happened spontaneously that night. And then we fleshed it out with parts in subsequent practices and turned it into a song. So it was like this spontaneous act of creation that was so clearly inspired by the three of us coming together with that shared purpose. And I found that really special. I also thought that it was the weakest song on the record until I heard it recorded. And then I was like, oh shit, this actually fucking works, which was a very pleasant surprise. And now it's like one of my favorites. I think the other one is I also had similar doubts about Wandering Mind, which I loved the recorded version of it, but I didn't think that it would play live. And then we brought it out on tour with us on the dates that we just did with Russian Circles. I actually made us skip it the first night of the tour because I was like, this show's too big. There's 900 people here. You start playing a quiet song as the opener at a show, people will start talking, they'll get distracted, it's not going to work. And so we waited until the second show of the tour when it was more intimate and played it, and it was like, fuck, this really works in an intimate space. And then they insisted on playing it at the next show, which was another bigger show. And I was like, I don't know, guys. I don't know if it's going to fly with a bigger crowd. And it did. And we played it every night after that. And it was like fucking so cathartic to play that song. It's such a really great feeling playing that song.
And again, you've got my just in case parentheses note here, fucking nailed. Mine is Wandering Mind as well. And if I'm not mistaken, January 16th, when you guys were here in Columbus, I think you closed with it.
We sure did, yeah.
And I'm sitting here listening to that album the first time. That song for sure stuck in my head, that bass line and everything. And every now and then, like a fly stuck in the room with you, it just kind of buzzes by. And have we heard the song that they closed with? Have we heard it? And that song starts, and it's immediate with "This was fucking it."
Yeah.
Yeah, that song is awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you on that one. So speaking of that show there, that was January. This album just came out, we'll call it a week ago here in May.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of that show was these new songs.
That's right.
I feel like that's a pretty bold thing to do. You have to know that you've got some awesome fucking material to pull that off. Where were you in the process of writing, recording, rehearing it, setting up your set list, whatever the hell it is, to realize that this stuff's good enough to do that?
It did not come anywhere from a place of confidence. It came from a place of limited access to rehearsal time. So we recorded the album in August. And then, Larry lives in Los Angeles. So there's only so many times that we can practice. So he came back in September. We played with Russian Circles at Metro. And it was like, okay, well, we definitely know all the songs from the record because we just recorded it. What old songs can we remember? And then we had a day or two to rehearse old songs on top of the songs that we already knew. It's sort of like, if you only have 2 days to rehearse for a show, you're going to go with the stuff that you know best, is kind of what it is. So we definitely didn't approach those January shows and it was Larry came in like 2 days before the shows and jammed what we knew we could get away with, and most of it was new stuff. And then we did it again in March with Russian Circles, but that was the case. There was like, at that point we had already been doing it. Nobody seemed upset so far, and also like we knew we're not going to get out west after the record comes out because there's only so much touring that we can do in a calendar year. So it was like, we may as well consider these shows to be like the tour for the record.
And speaking of that, the Russian Circles tour and your upcoming tour, hey, I bet that every night between you guys and Russian Circles was just an absolute education and awesomeness, and I'm envious of everybody that got to see those. You mentioned I think the next tour starts in July. Are you excited about being back in the album touring cycle?
Yeah, I think that's going to be really fun. I think it's going to be it was really fun to play these songs for people that hadn't heard them before, but I think it's going to be really validating and fun to play them now that people will have had some time to live with them.
What's your favorite tour story?
Yeah, I don't know, like everything. Actually, one from the most recent tour. You know, the first show was in Louisville, was a warm-up show with just us and like some friends in town, JJL and some others. And then we met up with Russian Circles in St. Louis. And then it was a day off right away at the beginning of the tour, and then pick up again in Dallas. So that's a very long drive. And I was looking for a place for us to stay along the route. And Laurent, I think, flippantly suggested, why don't we go to a water park hotel? So I looked for a water park hotel in Oklahoma City, just to to call his bluff. And in fact, they had just built one that had just opened, Okana Resorts. And I booked us 2 rooms there. And we drove all day through a crazy windstorm, rolled in, 2 hours before they were going to close down all the water slides. And we had 2 hours of fucking nonstop fun on water slides. They had some of the craziest water slides there. There was one that was like a fucking roller coaster where it took you like in like one of those rafts up a ramp, like a motorized ramp, and then dropped you down. Yeah, it was unreal fun. And such a good morale booster before 3 weeks of the longest drives known to man, you know?
Those drives would be killers. I don't envy you touring bands for stuff like that, but I apparently do envy you for finding random water park hotels in Oklahoma.
just a squad of 6 middle-aged men rolling in with no kids.
This is completely normal, folks.
Nothing to see here.
Do you prefer writing and recording or playing live?
That's the purest form of musical communication. Obviously, you can't do. I can't do that without the right. And like, there are huge rewards to unlocking the puzzles that I think every song presents. But it's the exchange of energy between the members of the band when they're on a stage, those people with the audience, that is, I mean, it's what I've, centered my entire life chasing that feeling.
You've mentioned previously some of the labels and stuff that you guys have worked with. I believe this is the first album with Run for Cover. How'd that partnership come about? How's it going so far?
I knew Tom from Run the Cover from my day job is that I'm a music publicist, and at one point I did press for Cloakroom, a fantastic band from Northwest Indiana. And their first EP was on Run for Cover, and then Tom from the label continued to manage them during the era where I worked with them, which was when they first signed to Relapse. And so I knew him, and I had been following the label for quite some time. We were just sort of at a stage where we knew we wanted to present this new material with a new partner. We weren't sure exactly what was right for it. But I was really inspired by the place that Run for Cover holds in the culture, where they have a very forward-looking mentality about how they've approached the curation of the label. The artists on the label have a forward mentality about their approach to like hardcore, and a vision of hardcore as something that's not regimented and rule based, but is open to experimentation with different ideas, which I think is something that we're very aligned with as well. I mean, a lot of our history, people have considered us to be a metal band, but our roots are really in the hardcore scene. And I think when we started, it was kind of like our four hardcore kids starting a metal side project, but of like a lot of those influences started coming to the fore, like Quicksand and Texas is the Reason and stuff like that. And it was a little bit subdued in people's perception of our music because we weren't vocally expressing that. But I think we were interested in chasing that same sort of idea and finding a home for this music where people would maybe start to draw out that perception a little bit more. Run for Cover have been great. Explain to them what our vision of the band was and this album was, and they completely understood where we were coming from. Jeff, who started the label, is from Boston and kind of came up during that era with when Cave In and Converge and ISIS and all those bands started breaking. They were sort of like a touch point for him. So I think he has a very intuitive understanding of the role that those bands played in the advancement of hardcore and where we fit into that narrative. So he had a really great understanding of us and where we see ourselves in the culture, and have been interested in like helping us pursue that. And they've never said no to any of my brilliant ideas, which I appreciate. So it's good. It's felt really copacetic.
Speaking of you guys' history, do you see it as a continuing, evolving thing, or is it chapters?
Oh, it's definitely continuing to evolve. Laurent and I have already started writing songs for whatever the next batch of material is, and they feel not markedly different, but definitely feel like an evolution from this last batch of songs. So I definitely see us as continuing to move forward.
Do you feel like there's a song or album that was a big turning point for the band?
The Fire in Our Throats was definitely a huge turning point for us. I think the initial EP, the demo, the untitled EP, was us trying to chase a sound that bore specific influences on our sleeves. We were super into Godflesh. We were super into Earth. We were super into Goatsnake. And we were kind of like trying to do a band that was an homage to those bands. And it was on Australasia where we started discovering our own identity and like leaning into our range of influences. But it was in our throats where I think we kind of figured out who we were, and how to express that.
Are there stereotypes for heavier music in general or instrumental music that you feel like should be debunked or are justified and you want to push them forward?
I think people think in terms of genre and most artists don't, if that makes sense. People are always calling us like post metal or post rock. There was one review I saw for the new record where they were like, I'm struggling to remember how they phrased it, but they were like, Pelican must always think of themselves as a post-rock band, but I really think that they're more like a sludgy metal band. It's like, I don't think we're a post-rock band or sludgy metal. I don't. It's like it's all open to interpretation anyway, right? I mean, it's like as soon as you record a song and put it out into the world, it's going to mean to the listener whatever it's going to mean. It's always in the eye of the beholder. So, but yeah, I would say like, people who are looking for bands to adhere to a certain set of aesthetic principles, like you're going to get let down.
You mentioned interpretation there. What's with the void of lyrics here? What is and that is the beauty of the instrumental stuff for me. Like I said earlier that Nighttime Stories was just fucking anger for me back then. And I've gone back to it here in this past week or two that we've been talking. And it's not that for me anymore. It's almost like sad just thinking about how my life has changed since then. It's certainly not sad for that moment in time and what it was, but now I'm rambling. And I don't have that with other music. Like I grew up in the fucking 90s. I had all the grunge stuff. It's still just the stuff I listen to. This stuff hits me differently. What is the most notable, strangest, most worth talking about interpretation of some of you guys' stuff that you've had?
One that I always think of, and there, I want to say I appreciate where they were coming from, and I don't think that they were wrong, but they might have misunderstood where we were coming from. I remember one time playing a show in where was it? Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and a family came in as soon as doors opened. Whole family, mom, dad, 2 kids, came straight to the merch table, wanted to buy merch and chat me up. And they were talking about how nice it was that there was this good, optimistic Christian music out in the world playing these spaces. And we had come, after we had rolled in, after listening to like 6 hours of satanic black metal. And I just, nodded and sold them shirts and told them that I appreciated their appreciation of what we were doing. But they're not wrong, and I don't think that they're bad people, and I would like to think I'm not a bad person for listening to satanic black metal. But it is sort of like you don't totally understand where we're coming from, but that's fine too. It's like I said, it's like you put the music out into the world, and it's going to mean to whomever. It's going to mean whatever it means to whomever hears it.
Right. I still hope you enjoyed it and all that fun stuff. You might have missed the mark. It's funny that you mentioned that. I've seen you guys a handful of times, and you're there at the merch booth. And I think it was 2016, I saw you guys, and I actually wanted to buy a CD. And I mean, at 16, I'm 30 something. So and I just realized this thinking about this the other day, trying to get ready for this conversation. I walked up there and I realized that the guitar player for the band is the guy that's working the fucking table. And you guys didn't have the CD I wanted. But I couldn't just walk away. So I bought a shirt that I didn't actually want at the time, if I'm being honest.
Sorry.
And now it's one of my favorite fucking shirts. So it kind of worked out in the end. So there's no question there. So I'll wrap that up with, do you remember that?
No, not particularly,
right,
but it was an experience for me too. I've had a lot of shirt selling experiences.
I'm sure that there are plenty of opportunities for awkwardness there. That could be just a show in and of itself.
And I know a lot of people that don't want to work their own band's merch, and I get it, because you can have a lot of awkward interactions. But I just find it really rewarding to meet the people who listen to us, because I think it's so flattering and meaningful that this passion project of ours is something that people have led into their lives, and that it means something to them. And I think it means something to them to be able to share those thoughts and those feelings with somebody who's in the band. So I've had some weird interactions, but I've also had so many really lovely conversations with people that listen to our band, and I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Hell yeah, man. What's one thing you wish you'd known when you started Pelican, or when Pelican started, however I should phrase that?
I wish I knew that we were going to be a band for 25 years and that we should come up with a name that's a little less silly.
Okay, where did the band name come from?
I have no idea. It was just a flippant, like somebody said mentioned Pelican in the course of a story, and we're like, I don't know, we need a band name, so that'll work. There's no other band named Pelican. It turns out there was, but whatever. They're like, Swedish 60s psychedelic band, or whatever. There's been a few Pelicans, but none with the longevity that we have, fortunately.
How much attention do you pay to things like streaming numbers?
A lot.
Do you?
Yeah, well, like I told you, my day job is in the music industry, so I'm the way that promotion has been doing it for 16 years now is it used to really be about the merits of the music, and now metrics play an increasingly important role in the way people discuss music. So when you're talking about like trying to get a write-up in a magazine, paying attention to metrics is super important. So because I'm doing that on behalf of my clients, it's only natural that my focus on that professionally carries over to what I'm doing in my my off time as well.
When you look at Pelican's numbers, is there anything that does anything ever stand out to you in like a surprising fashion that this song's doing better than this song, or this album's super popular suddenly here recently?
The song that has grown considerably lately is Drought, which was a song from our first album, Australasia, which we loved at the time and then grew to hate. And then people gave us a hard time for not playing it for many years. And then finally they got over it. And then we fell back in love with it in the course of putting the reissues together. But that was when it happened. It was like we reissued the first 3 albums. And then of all of those albums, the only song that has shown growth on streaming since that time is Drought. So apparently it's just this song that it was biding its time, waiting for its moment, and its moment has arrived.
And now it's here. So you do a lot of these things for the band, and you've mentioned that your personal life works into things like PR stuff. What is one question that you hate getting asked in these types of things, and did I ask it?
You haven't asked anything that is too uncomfortable, but I have had I remember doing the Metal Sucks podcast years ago, and not to throw them under the bus, but they were like, "What do you do for your day job?" And then I explained it to them, and they even though they surely must work with publicists on a regular basis, it was like they had never had a conversation with one before. So they grilled me about my job for like 10 minutes, which wasn't what I wanted to do in the course of an interview about Pelican, which is like a creative endeavor. Like obviously my day job, there's creativity involved too, but it's a different it's a very different pursuit.
I know Pelican isn't the only thing that you're involved in. I believe you've got Ryler too, is that right?
Relayer.
Is there anything else, anything you want to mention from that? Anything else you've got going on that you want to make sure that gets mentioned here?
Relayer is working on a new record. Hopefully that'll come out next year or something like that. That's my band with Colin, who is in the original lineup of Russian Circles, and Stephen Haas, who plays in Locrian and a slew of other bands. Be interested in Relayer because it's also a euphoric, uplifting instrumental rock band. Not dissimilar in a lot of ways. I also play in a power ambient quintet called Chord. We're harder to find on streaming because there's a lot of different groups that call themselves Chord, but we're out there. I made a solo record years back. I've been working on the follow-up for, I would say for years, but really I did a lot of work on it right after the first one came out, and then it's been sitting on a hard drive for a long time since then. Yeah, I don't know. I work on a bunch of different things, here and there.
Sounds like you're keeping busy.
Well, when I can.
So you've made mention that you've brought some smart things to say to a podcast I've smartly titled Epitome of Stupidity for some fucking reason.
You're learning to live with the regret of naming your thing?
I have. I get to send out emails to PR people saying things like, "Hey, I'm with Epitome of Stupidity, and yes, I regret the name now and then."
Well, I got your pitch, and I was like, that is the perfect place for me. So
let's say either way, I'm going to try to dumb it down for both of us here with a round of what I've dubbed stupid fire questions to take us into the home stretch. First one should be an easy one here. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Something you could eat for a week straight?
Pizza.
That's what I had tonight. Beatles or Stones?
Beatles.
If you had to, this is a stupid question to ask you, and I'm just hearing it as I'm starting to read it, but I'm going to do it anyway. If you had to compare your music to an animal, what would it be?
Armadillo.
Oh, not a pelican, huh?
You see, that's why it's a dumb band name.
That's why it's a dumb band name.
It's more of a, honestly, it's more of a peacock. I was just being flippant.
Pelican the peacock. If you could ask, this is the animal section of the show. If you could ask one animal one question, what's the animal? What's the question?
A koala, and how can I learn to chill like that?
That would be a fucking useful skill.
Yeah.
What's the song you grew up with that you hope you never hear again?
What's Going On by Four Non Blondes? Or yeah, it's called What's Up, right?
I think so, yeah. I know what song you're talking about for sure.
Yeah.
The other
It's
side
stuck
of
in my head now. Now that I said it, it's stuck in my head.
I'm gonna try to
Like,
rectify it. I'm gonna try to
man?
rectify it. What's one heavy song that everybody should hear before they die?
Go Spread Your Wings by Godflesh.
What's one instrument you don't play that you'd like to?
Zither.
Definitely didn't have that one on my list. Beer or liquor?
Beer.
Okay. What's the first, not format specific here, what's the first album you ever bought?
Ever bought? Full Moon Fever by Petty and
Can't go wrong with Tom Petty.
fuck no.
Go-to karaoke song?
Looking Out My Back Door by Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Sausage links or patties?
Patties.
Yeah,
with an addendum, I'm vegan, so it's by many people's standards, it's not sausage.
The standard is stupid, and I think it worked. The last question here is super original, patent pending, all those things that you've never heard this anywhere else before. So I hope you're prepared. You, Trevor of Pelican, get sent to an island by yourself for the rest of your life. You get to take one album with you. What's the album?
Jawbreaker, Dear You.
I looked like I was going to have you perplexed there for a minute, but you got to it. At this point, I'd like to say thanks to Trevor for talking with me today. Again, the album is Flickering Resonance, and it is out everywhere that you can listen to it. So you should absolutely be doing that as soon as this is over. I recommend doing it with lots of volume as well. Don't worry, your neighbors will thank you. Links for the band, the podcast, and the Brimming Horn dudes are all in the show description. Give everyone a follow. And again, please hit the old subscribe button wherever it is you're hearing this from. At this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Trevor here to get us out of here on a hopeful melancholy note.
This is where I introduced the song.
That's it.
All right. Here comes Indelible from Flickering Resonance.
Yeah.